Welcome to the second part of the introduction to the Book of Proverbs. Proverbs is actually a collection of collected wisdom. It was written by several authors over a kind of wide range of time. We're not going to get into so much who those authors are, the veracity of them having written it. As far as I'm concerned, that doesn't matter that much. And we saw last study that there is plenty of evidence that there was wisdom literature very similar to the Book of Proverbs that was being written in the Solomonic period in the Middle East. So we're not going to get into the weeds too much on that kind of stuff, but what we're going to do is we're going to enjoy the book and we're going to learn from it. And we're going to let it spiritually bless us. Now, the Book of Proverbs stands between the law and the prophets. See, the children of Israel were to obey the law, and they were to heed to the prophets. And you can do that. You can obey every law, and you can heed to everything that the prophet says, and still lead a very dry life. I think of the rich young ruler. He did everything. Well, I did all that. I checked all the boxes. I didn't steal. I didn't, murder today. And Jesus says, well, sell everything. Live the life that I'm living. Come follow me. And he couldn't do that. So the Book of Proverbs is going to show us how to live a fulfilled life in every aspect, while still meeting our religious obligations, to use a phrase from back during the Old Testament period, because we don't really have religious obligations. We have obligations to Jesus, so we can fulfill that. We can fulfill the law of love that Jesus talks about and have an overflowing life. And part of the way that we can do that is by understanding and applying the Book of Proverbs. The book is written to individuals, not the nation, and most of the Old Testament was written to the nations or the children of Israel. Very little is written to individuals. And it tells you how to live within yourself, within your family, within your friendships, within your community, and as a citizen of the world. It tells you in every aspect how you're supposed to behave, what you're supposed to do. It puts the law where the rubber meets the road, as J. Vernon McGee would say. Now, as we go through the books, I want you to think about the emotions that are presented and how these same emotions arise in you. We're also going to spend a lot of time looking at the book of Ecclesiastes, which is kind of a mirror to this, and there's even more emotions that arise in that. So when we're looking at that, you're going to see Solomon had some crazy mood swings. We're going to go through different sections of Proverbs at different speeds. The next time we're going to start on the first 6 verses of chapter 1, and it's an outline of the entire book. It takes a little bit of time to go through it and understand. We're going to be going almost word by word, but we'll be totally blessed by that. But there are other parts of the book that are better just allowed to rain on us, like we're parched flowers in a field, and just let the words themselves rain on us and revive us. So we'll go through those sections pretty quickly. We're going to let the text and the Holy Spirit discern how fast or how slowly we should go through the different sections. And our end game is to learn the lessons that Solomon is teaching but that Solomon stopped applying in his own life as he ruled the children of Israel, and to apply them in our lives from this day forward. Now in Ecclesiastes 4, verse 13, Solomon said, "A poor but wise youth is better than an old and foolish king who no longer knows how to receive advice." So we don't want to be like that. That's kind of what Solomon did. He had a lot of wisdom, and he became an old, maybe not so much fool, but not as wise as he started out. And we're going to look at this in some detail. And we're going to seek what Solomon describes as receiving his words in Proverbs 2, verses 10 and 11, where he says, "For wisdom will enter your heart, and moral knowledge will be attractive to you. Discretion will protect you. Understanding will guard you to deliver you from the way of the wicked." And if we walk away from the study of this whole book, being able to do that, we will have fulfilled in an overabundance what we set out to do. And we're going to try to avoid what in Proverbs 26:67 it says, "Like legs that hang limp from the lame, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools." So even the fools can quote the Proverbs, and sometimes we hear them do that. I'm going to be reading from the Net Bible. It's my favorite Bible. It has over 60,000 translator's notes. And I like to look at why different things are translated the way that they are, or why a certain word could be translated in different sections in different ways. So, and I just like the way that it's worded. It's in plain English. And as I mentioned last week, that despite all the wisdom that Solomon had, that he had some struggles, and I mentioned it a few minutes ago too. I'm going to read from Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 14 to 20. Let's see what the king was supposed to do as he ruled over the children of Israel. Verse 14 says, "When you come to the land the Lord God is giving you, and take it over and live in it, and then say, 'I will select a king like all the nations surrounding me,' you must select without fail a king whom the Lord your God chooses from among your fellow citizens. From among your fellow citizens you must appoint a king. You may not designate a foreigner who is not one of your fellow Israelites. Moreover, he must not accumulate horses for himself, or allow the people to return to Egypt to do so, for the Lord has said you must never again return that way. Furthermore, he must not marry many wives, lest his affections turn aside, and he must not accumulate much silver and gold. When he sits on his royal throne, he must make a copy of this law on a scroll given to him by the Levitical priests. It must be with him constantly, and he must read it as long as he lives, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God and observe all the words of his law and these statutes and carry them out. Then he will not exalt himself above his fellow citizens or turn from the commandments to the left or the right. And he and his descendants will enjoy many years ruling over his kingdom in Israel." So he wasn't supposed to take foreign wives, especially from Egypt. And he wound up with 700 wives and 300 concubines. And many of those wives and concubines were from the surrounding areas, the pagan cultures, and one in particular was Pharaoh's daughter. So, and Pharaoh's daughter and some of the others steered him away from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was not supposed to accumulate horses or gold and silver. But we read last week that he had 12,000 horses and great wealth. And he also struggled with life in general and fulfillment in particular. And that's something that we want to look at in some depth as we go through this. In Ecclesiastes, the first two chapters, he sets out this whole futility rant where he talks about all the things that he did and found them futile. They were just like grasping at the wind. You're never going to catch it. From the nature of things just go on the same year after year. Nothing's new under the sun. And he had many accomplishments, but he found them futile. He was very wise, and secular wisdom he found futile. He became self-indulgent. He started drinking, wine, women, and song. Found that futile. He became very materialistic and was a workaholic, and he found that futile. He did find that wisdom is better than folly, but he found it futile that the same fate awaits a wise man as a fool, and that we on earth would have many restless days, painful days and restless nights. So he sounds like a depressed and despondent man. If we had time, we could read through these verses. And it sounds by reading through them that wisdom isn't all it's cracked up to be. But let's look at the end of Ecclesiastes when Solomon works his way through it and gets to the denouement. We're going to read from Ecclesiastes 12, verses 9 through 14. Not only was the teacher wise, and that's Solomon, not only was the teacher wise, but he also taught knowledge to the people. He carefully evaluated and arranged many proverbs. The teacher sought to find delightful words and to write accurately truthful sayings. The words of the sages are like prods, and the collected sayings are like firmly fixed nails. They are given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. What great advice. There is no end to the making of many books, and much study is exhausting to the body. Having heard everything, I have reached this conclusion. Fear God and keep his commandments, because this is the whole duty of man. For God will evaluate every deed, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So I think the moral here is pretty clear, that we're to fear God and we're to seek wisdom and other things in the context of that fear. And we're to enjoy our everyday life as that fear guides us. Now here's a caveat as we get ready to launch into the study of the verse-by-verse study of this book. There may be times when we doubt what God's telling us here. There may be times that we doubt that wisdom is what we need, especially the wisdom that we're studying at the time. We may become lost in our search. We might even, from time to time, become despondent and feel that it's all worthless, that it's like grasping at wind. I mean, Solomon did, and he was the wisest man in the world. But in this study, we will return time and time again to the fact that we are to fear God, obey him, even when we don't understand what he's saying at the time, and understand that we'll understand it by and by. Now we're finally going to start our verse-by-verse study next Friday evening, and as I said, it's verses 1 through 6 are an introduction to the book. Let me just read them and to give you a flavor. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to learn wisdom and moral instruction, and to discern wise counsel, to receive moral instruction and skillful living, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to impart shrewdness to the morally naive, and a discerning plan to the young person. Let the wise also hear and gain instruction, and let the discerning acquire guidance. to discern the meaning of a proverb and a parable, the sayings of the wise and their riddles. Now we're going to dive into this in detail next time. But until then, I want you to ponder, maybe ponder while reading about Solomon in the Bible, how he could have been given such wisdom, but had such struggles and failures. Until next time, God bless you.